Looking at this election maps now cast for Scotland for the Holyrood election in May, the question that resonates in my head is how? How are we looking at a map of such SNP dominance? Welcome back, everybody, to the channel. We are previewing the Scotland election that's happening in a couple of weeks' time, under a couple of weeks' time now. We're very, very close. If you're new here, please do consider subscribing now. We're doing a live stream on the evening of the 7th of May at 10 o'clock when the polls close. We'll stay up in the night as long as it seems sort of sensible to stay up, and then we'll be back in the morning on the 8th of May to do a live stream throughout pretty much the whole of the day as the votes come rolling in. We'll be covering it all live on the channel, so please do subscribe. We're very, very close to 14,000 subscribers to the channel now, which is fantastic. It'd be really, really cool if we could nudge over the line to 14,000 by the 7th of May. If we could get over the line of 15,000 by the 7th of May, that would be an even better place, a really cool place to start the stream from. So yeah, if you haven't yet, please do come and subscribe to the channel, because we're going to do content like this, which is looking at Scotland today. And like I said, I know it's on the thumbnail, SNP lucky. Yes, they really are. Now, why do I say that? Well, to look at this map, you think, wow, here's a country that is really, really behind the SNP and fervently in favour of independence from the United Kingdom. And that's frankly just not true. How have we got here? From 3 years ago, 2023, the SNP were on the ropes. Nicola Sturgeon had her apogee in 2021, that sort of time. She had an iron grip on Scottish politics. By 2023, it had all gone wrong. She was mired in a scandal regarding the SNP's finances. She was forced to resign, step down. Her husband actually later got charged by the police with offences related to that financial situation with the SNP as well. So this party just became riven by scandal. They had the leadership election. Humza Yousaf won that, became the first minister for a short period. He seems very, very unpopular, really. He lost a vote of no confidence and had to step down. And then we got John Swinney, who is now the SNP First Minister, but that didn't save them from almost wipeout in the general election. Let's just go and have a quick look at the general election map. There it is on your screen now. That's Scotland in 2024. And you can see Labour almost got the country back to looking how it looked pre-2010. Scotland was always traditionally Labour territory until 2010, when the SNP sort of basically wiped them out in Scotland. But you can see, although they didn't manage to get up into these sort of rural constituencies and into the northeast, they did scythe through the central belt of Scotland here, from the Lothians over here on the very east all the way across to Ayrshire over here, and that's all gone red. And so, you know, this looked like the beginning of the end of the SNP in 2024. So what's happened between July 2024 and now to have the map looking like this, so fervently yellow? Well, have the SNP changed their ways? No, they haven't. Only 23% of Scottish people think that the SNP have done a good job, and yet the map looks like this. So why? Well, for two reasons. Firstly, obviously the Labour government in Westminster has been bad by anyone's standards. I think even the most fervent Labour supporter would admit it's not gone very, very well. So there's been chaos in Westminster, scandal after scandal, very, very unpopular policies across the country, and the SNP government in Holyrood in Edinburgh has been able to point down to Westminster on that score. And then also a splitting of the unionist vote. Now, the unionist vote has been split in Scotland for the last 15, 20 years anyway. Now it's worse because Reform are here, and we're going to talk a lot about Reform in this video, because they haven't been able to break through in Scotland in the same way that they've been able to do in England and Wales, or apparently at least in Wales. We haven't actually had an electoral test yet. Obviously, we'll see on the 7th of May, but it looks like Reform will be vying for top spot with Plaid Cymru, as we saw in our video last week. But in Scotland, although they've done a phenomenal job, in fact, let's go and have a look at the polling. So here, let's have a look at the start at the very left of the chart here. You can see in June 2021, the SNP under Nicola Sturgeon almost at 50% of the vote. Very, very, very popular. They seemed untouchable. And then you can see it all starts going wrong in sort of late 2022. They're at 47.6%. And then by February 2024 or January 2024, they're down at 36%. And it kept going all the way down to 32%, which was their lowest point in sort of August 2024. So they had a very, very bad 18 months, 2 years, while all that crisis was going on. Then John Swinney managed to stabilise things, and they've managed to climb back up to 35%, but they're way down from the 50% they were. So you can see this is not a massively popular party, although they are way ahead of anybody else, and that's the point we need to look at. So the SNP are on 35%. The Greens, who are separatists in their own right as well, are on 6% according to the polls. So they're on 41% of the vote. The separatist vote is on 41% of the vote. Then you've got Labour, Reform, Conservatives, and the Liberal Democrats, which you can see down there polling on the right here. You can see the numbers. You add those together and you come to about 55% of the vote. So the unionist vote is a good 15 points ahead of the separatist vote. And yet the map is going to look like this. And this probably will be something what it looks like on the 7th of May, on the 8th of May, when the results come in. So let's just have a look and see what's going on as we go through some of these constituencies then. So firstly, the Conservatives obviously not doing well in Scotland, but actually their votes holding up better in the constituencies they had anyway. It's particularly in the south. They're losing Galloway and West Dumfries to the SNP, who are marginally ahead of them. This is very, very close. But look at the vote splitting. Conservatives there on just under 32% of the vote, Reform on 26.5% of the vote. You add those two parties together, I mean, forget about Labour and the Lib Dems even, which are also unionist votes, but let's just take the Conservatives and Reform, add those together, and you're in excess of 55% of the vote for a unionist party, and yet the SNP might sneak in on the constituency vote here and win down in the south of Scotland. In the other constituencies, the Tories are down 15 points, as you can see there, so like I say, it's not gone well for them in Scotland, obviously, and the polling could be wrong. Let's be frank, the polling could be off. The Tories could score significantly less than the polling is suggesting. A Reform could take that vote and score more. I don't know how likely that is. Let me know in the comments. How is it going in Scotland? How well received are Reform in Scotland? These are the vibes that I don't really have, you see. I've always said when I talk about Scotland and Wales really, but Scotland in particular, I don't have, as an Englishman, I don't have the same sort of gut feeling or confidence in my gut feeling with Scotland. So if you're a Scots person watching this video, please do get in the comments and let me know what's going on up there. How is Reform being received? Do you think they're being underpolled in Scotland? I've said, I put my head above the parapet. I think they're being underpolled in national polling. I think they're closer to 30% than they are 25%. I could be wrong. We'll obviously find out in a couple of weeks' time. Ettrick, Roxburgh and Berwickshire, again, Conservatives here are actually quite comfortably ahead. But even if you just add those two votes together for the Conservatives and Reform, you're getting on for almost 60% of the vote there. So again, there is a strong unionist vote in Scotland that this map would suggest doesn't necessarily exist. And that's not true. Let's come up into the northeast, where I remember last time we looked at this, when we did our first Scotland preview video in the latter parts of last year, Reform were ahead in Banffshire and Buchan Coast. Now, they've slipped back in the polls a little bit, as they have in national polling, and so they're no longer ahead here, and the SNP are ahead of them by 3.5% roughly. But again, look at that Conservative plus Reform vote, 55% of the vote, really, if you add those two together, comfortably beating the SNP by about 20 points. But the vote splitting is killing off the unionist vote again. If we come down to Aberdeenshire West, a Conservative constituency, they're ahead, but not by too much. It's only about 3 points in it. But again, add Reform in there, who are 25%. If you add that to the unionist vote, you're looking at 55% of the vote again. If you add the Lib Dems in, which is also a unionist vote, then you're looking at over 60% of the vote. So, you know, the unionist vote is so split, and it's letting the SNP in, as we can see in some of these other constituencies where the SNP are ahead. The Aberdeenshire East, the SNP might win that on a third of the vote, and yet the Conservatives plus Reform come quite comfortably, well, not quite comfortably, but just over 50% of the vote. And yet the SNP may well win that constituency seat. I believe it's the same down here in Angus North and Mearns. The SNP, 37% of the vote, comfortably ahead of second place. But again, you add them together and you're looking at 50% of the vote for the Unionists, just if you add the Conservatives and Reform together. So, again, I'm not a Scotsman, so I'll be very interested to hear Scottish people's takes on this. But it seems as though the independent vote only has one option, doesn't it? It's the SNP. Now, I know Alba was around for a little while. Alex Salmond, former leader of the SNP, former First Minister of Scotland, started Alba Party because he fell out with Nicola Sturgeon in the SNP, and it was sort of a bit like a restore to reform sort of thing, but it didn't get anywhere. I don't know if they're standing in this election, to be honest with you, but they're certainly not polling anywhere that's going to affect anything. So the separatist vote only has the SNP, really. Now, the Greens are there, but they're not, they're not going to trouble the scorers at the top end. So those who are very much animated by the idea of Scottish independence, of which there is a large proportion of Scots, don't get me wrong, it's in the minority, but it is a large section of the Scottish people are animated about that. They know what they've got to do. They go out and they tick the box of the SNP. The unionist vote, on the other hand, I don't feel like the unionists vote on that topic. They don't vote with unionism in mind, with the union in mind. They're voting on things that, just other political issues, economy, healthcare, education, crime, immigration, all these things. They're voting for those issues. I don't think SNP voters are voting on those all that much. I mean, I know they have left-wing opinions on pretty much all of that stuff, but I think that the one thing that animates the SNP voter is the independence issue. They are so passionate about being independent, and even though they are that they shouldn't be winning these constituencies on a independence versus unionism head to head, yet they do, because the unionist parties are fighting amongst themselves about policy, and essentially the unionist parties are fighting a left versus right battle. The SNP voters are fighting a unionist versus independence battle. Have I got that about right, do you think? Is that what's going on in Scotland? Because it's what it seems to me. And so despite the SNP being far less popular than they were 5 years ago, when they obviously had a very good result, came close to getting majority, I believe, and went into coalition with the Greens, the map still looks like this, SNP dominance. And some polls have them getting a majority in this election, by the way. So, yeah, let me know what you think about my take there. That's how I see it. And in order to get the SNP out, there needs to be one unionist party that can satisfy the Scottish voter on enough of those other issues, the general political issues, the healthcares, the economy, the immigration, all those bits, that the unionist voter goes, okay, I'll give you a shout. But at the moment, that just doesn't happen. And as we saw down here, all those unionist parties vying for, Labour and Reform basically both on 18%, Lib Dem and Tories both on 10%. They're just splitting the vote between four of them, and it's letting the SNP get away with it, basically. Like I said, 23% of Scottish people 23% of Scottish people do think the Scottish government is doing a good job, which means 67% of the country think they aren't. 77% of the country think they aren't, which is extraordinary that they're then going to be voted in with a map looking like this. So I think coming out the other side of this election, we can have a look at what the Parliament would look like based on this nowcast. This is what the Parliament would look like, and you can see the SNP very, very close to majority, only looks like 3 seats short of being exactly on 50%, so 4 short of a majority in their own right. So they are very, very close, at least based on the polling, based off this nowcast. With the Greens added onto them, very, very comfortable coalition government they could make there. With the unionist parties down here making up a good chunk of the Parliament, but not enough to get in themselves. I think basically this election will go to the SNP. The polls are not going to be that wrong. The SNP are going to be the winners of this election in Scotland. And what needs to happen between now and 2026 will be 2031. It's 5-year terms in Holyrood, I believe. In 2031, there needs to be a unified unionist candidate on the ballot paper, basically one that Scots can get behind. And I think that's what Labour used to be in Scotland, really. Labour was really the natural home of most Scottish voters was the Labour Party. And obviously that's all disintegrated in the last 15, 20 years and hasn't recovered. And is probably now going towards its lowest point, in fact, as far as Labour are concerned. Look, could the polls be wrong? Of course they could. Like I've said, and I've stuck my neck out on the line. I said earlier, I think Reform are being underpolled in national polling. I think they're doing a bit better than the polls suggest they are. And actually, in the last week or so, we have seen them being re-rated up towards 30%. I could be wrong on that. It's pure vibes. Like I said, there's no magic statistics behind this or anything like that. It's purely my own gut feeling. But I don't think the polls are going to be out enough in Scotland for it to have much of an effect on the result. If Reform end up in the 20% at the expense of a bit more Conservative vote and some Labour vote as well, I wonder how much of a difference that makes. We haven't looked at the regional list proportion or portion of the election in this video. That's where all of Reform seats are coming from at the moment. I wonder how many more points off of the Conservatives Reform would have to win in order to win those constituency seats that the Tories are currently winning. But really, I think particularly in terms of Reform, the Conservatives and the Labour Party, the three of them are just letting the SNP in numerous constituencies. We looked at those Conservative and Reform ones, but there are Labour ones too with Reform where it's much closer when you add them together. You're looking at sort of a split of 2 or 3% between SNP and Labour plus Reform, but very much the same thing is happening. But of course, it's not that simple as well. I know, there are some irreconcilable differences between what a Labour voter wants out of a government and what a Reform voter wants out of a government, and so it's far less simple than simply adding the votes together and saying this would be the result, because some Labour voters would much rather vote for the SNP than Reform, and vice versa. So I know it isn't that straightforward, but this is what I mean. The Unionists are fighting on policy, and I think the Separatists are fighting on the separatism issue. And that really is sustaining them up at that 35% level, in my opinion. So do get in the comments, let me know what you think. Here would be the final result. It's there are the seat numbers that would result from this nowcast. I mean, Reform and the Greens and the Lib Dems, the only parties that are increasing in this. The Conservatives down 20 seats is a very bad result for them. Labour down 4 seems not too bad, but 2021 was a bad election for Labour in Scotland, so that's a really, really bad result that they're down on a historically bad result as it is. It could be worse than that for Labour in Scotland. Like I've said, I don't think the mainstream and people who commentate on this stuff are really properly prepared for what's about to happen to Labour in May. So it could be worse for Labour than this. And the SNP are down 3 seats, but considering the decline in the polls they've had since 2021, it's quite extraordinary they're down only 3 seats. They're not getting the electoral punishment that their performance has deserved, that Scottish people think they deserve. Like I said, 77% of Scots don't think they've done a good job, and yet they're going to get an SNP government returned again. So lucky SNP? Well, yes, very much so, because I think they were there for the taking this year. It should have been Labour's, right? I mean, if we look back at that general election result in 2024, the next logical step for Labour was to take over Holyrood and to win again in Wales. That was the natural next step. That's where most people saw it going on the immediate aftermath of winning a landslide election victory in Westminster. Was going to be a Labour hegemony in the UK. It's not gone that way. It's gone very, very badly for Labour in Westminster. They're going to lose Wales. They're going to lose again in Scotland. But nobody else, but the only party benefiting is the SNP, which is really quite extraordinary considering the decline in their popularity over the last 5 years. So yeah, there you have it, guys. Do let me know what you think in the comments. As I say, do you think I'm about right in my unionist versus separatist analysis there? Sorry we didn't go into as much detail on the actual sort of polling as we did with Scotland, but it's a bit more complex with the constituency vote and the regional list vote added in there as well. But of course, we'll be following all the results coming in on that live stream on the 8th of May. That's when Scotland are counting. So do make sure you subscribe with the notification bell hit so you don't miss that live stream. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you on Friday for our final by-election roundup video before the big day, before the May 7th elections. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.